Hello, my name is Evie. Welcome to my class, all about how to get your toddler to stop hitting. Okay, so most parents and teachers, preschool teachers and daycare workers, anyone working with young children, we all know that it is developmentally appropriate for children to go through a hitting stage and a biting stage. So these things that, your child is just learning how to express themselves. And if you can imagine, having a lot of emotion, as a lot of toddlers do, they get overwhelmed by that emotion. And sometimes they feel so powerless that the only alternative they're thinking of that they can do is to use their body to communicate. So it's really important as we dive into this lesson, to kind of really understand a little bit more about why children might hit. One thing that I like to remind parents and caregivers and teachers of is that when a child hits or really acts out in any negative way, it is likely because they are trying to set some kind of a boundary. So if you can imagine, you see two little kids, two toddlers sitting in a sandbox, and let's say one toddler snatches a toy from the other toddler, that toddler feels violated. Intuitively, they know a boundary has been crossed. And so they might hit that other child as kind of retaliation for that boundary being crossed. So children intuitively, they know when a boundary has been crossed, and that is a way that they are trying to assert themselves. So if we look at their behavior through that lens, it can be a lot more empowering and less triggering for you to kind of understand and how to engage your child when they act that way. It's really important for you to not take their behavior personally. I know that's like a big pill to swallow, right? For most of us feel like maybe we're failures, we're not doing a good job, and oh my gosh, my kid's going to be that kid on the playground. I've heard all of those stories. And let me tell you, this likely has nothing to do with you. Okay. So this is not personal at all. This is 100% about your child and where your child is at. And so the most important thing for you to do is just to go into situations with your child when they're hitting in as much of a calm, neutral, and curious space as possible. I know that can be difficult, especially if your toddler is hitting you. So, what I'm going to go over with you in just a minute is I have 8 tips that you can start implementing for how to prevent aggressive behavior. And then I have 6 tips for what to do when the behavior happens. So it's kind of split up into two sections, and I have a printout for you. So you can go ahead and use that printout and go over that with me while I'm reviewing these different ideas and tips for you. I also would just like to throw the idea out there that if you are dealing with something that you feel like, I really want to get more feedback, I would love to know exactly what to do with my child in our home, in our situation. I would love to have a conversation with you, and I just want to invite you, if you're interested, to go ahead and set up a either a consultation with me or a coaching session where we can just really dive deep into what's going on, and I can help you navigate a lot of great positive discipline tools to implement with your toddler that will help empower you and empower your child. So I think that's everything. So without further ado, let's jump into the material. So, what I have are 8 tips for preventing aggression. So, these are all tips that you can do to start to really navigate and kind of prevent the situations where your toddler might act out aggressively towards another child or towards you or towards their sibling. Okay, let's jump in. So, the first tip I have in preventing really the aggressive behavior that you're seeing with your child is to limit temptation. So, it's really important to go through your home and make sure there aren't any dangerous things that they can pull on, use as a weapon, or anything like that. I know this one might seem a little obvious, but it can be really helpful and enlightening to actually get down and crawl on the floor and look around from your child's level, because you'll start to see things a little bit differently. So if you do that and you notice, oh my gosh, like this lamp over here could, my child could grab that and it could fall on top of him and really hurt him. You might want to move that lamp to another space that's higher up that he can't reach. So as far as, just the idea is to limit temptations, and to keep your child engaged with their toys as much as possible, or other fun objects to play with that are safe, like Tupperware containers and things like that. The second tip I have for you is to change the subject and really just keeping distractions on hand. So, playing games, singing songs, doing things that your child will automatically like love and jump into can be really helpful. So, in my home, I use things like, especially with like bathtub time or things like that. I'll use shaving cream as a distraction. I'll also let my kiddos, pick a special fun song to play, on Pandora or Spotify or whatnot, as a distraction. So using distractions when they are starting to get really amped up can really be beneficial. The third step I have for you is to really be consistent with nap times. Toddlers need 11 to 14 hours of sleep each day for their growing mind and body and development for them to be healthy. So, which it might mean one nap, it might mean two. And then just making sure they're not getting too much juice or sugary things. So, I know it just kind of constantly feels like kids love the sweets and we're constantly trying to manage the sweets. So it's good to have things in moderation. Okay? So if your child has two cookies in one day, it's not the end of the world. Their teeth are not going to rot, like it's no big deal. So give yourself some space and grace to just, live in the moment, but also just to be cognizant and aware of how much sugar they're having, and make sure that they're getting enough sleep, because the more sleep they get, the less reactive they will be. The fourth step I have for you is to talk about feelings. So, just as you are working with your child and helping them understand their own emotions, and how to empathize with others, like maybe while you're reading books, you can say, "Hey, how does Curious George feel in this picture? Is he sad?" And you can make a sad face, or happy, or surprised, or worried. And so you can start the conversation with your child around emotions and feelings. That can do a lot for a child, because many of us were taught that thoughts or that feelings were not okay to be shared, and that we need to stuff them. And anytime we have a negative feeling, it's not okay to express them. But it's actually really powerful to learn to express our feelings in a positive way. So, feelings aren't good or bad, they just are, and they need to be expressed as long as we're not hurting ourselves or anybody else. So, those two things are really important when you're talking to your child about expressing their feelings. Um, it's really just, emotion is really just energy in motion. So if you think about it that way, you're just releasing the energy. And talking about how their actions kind of affect the family and people around them. That could be really powerful too. The fifth step or tip is to rehearse responses. So practice what to do in various situations. That way your child will be more prepared for disagreements during recess and long lines at the supermarket. So if you are getting ready to go to the grocery store and you have to take your toddler with you, I would highly recommend giving them a distraction, some kind of toy or a fun treat to bring with them that they can play with or eat in the cart while you are going grocery shopping. And then if you're at the store and they say they want whatever toy or whatever food, and you say, I'm so sorry, we can't get that today, I'm so sorry, and they hit you, you can grab their hand softly but firmly and say gentle touches, and do this on the side of your face. So, what that can communicate, make sure you have eye contact with your child when you're doing that. What that can communicate with a child is, instead of focusing on the negative, which is don't hit, it's bad, stop hitting, you're switching gears and you're focusing on the positive. You're focusing on what you want your child to do instead of what not to do. So immediately, children usually respond to that pretty quickly, because you're telling them and showing them with your body, what you want them to do. And another great thing about this tip is that it is very, very difficult to be upset and to say gentle touches. Like, if you're really mad and angry, they're going to get that from you. So it's really important that your words and your actions are in alignment, because regardless of what you're saying and what your words are, children will read your energy. So make sure that when you're talking to them, that you are fully in alignment with what you're saying, and that your words and your actions match. Okay, so the sixth step here, or tip, is to really praise positive behavior. So it's kind of well known that whatever we focus on expands. So if we're constantly focusing on the negative, we're going to get more negative with our children. If we want more positive, we need to focus on the positive. And anytime your child refrains from hitting, and let's say instead of hitting a child, another child, or you, they hit a stuffed animal or hit a drum or throw a bean bag across the room or something like that. All of those are positive ways that they can express their anger in a safe way that does not hurt anybody else or themselves. So take pause when they do a positive action, to go ahead and take notice of it, and to look them in the eye and communicate and say, wow, you were so angry, but you didn't hit. You threw a beanbag across the room. That is a positive way to show anger, or whatever the emotion is in that moment. So, really focusing on the positive and helping your child understand that you see them when they're doing the right thing. You're not always just focused on the negative, because if a child just feels like, I can't do anything right, I'm screwing up all the time, why would they ever change their behavior? So it's so important, especially for a toddler. They are learning who they are through how you're treating them. And so give them the benefit of the doubt. And remember, they are just acting out in the best way they know how to set boundaries and to create um, boundaries within their world. So we just need to teach them how to set boundaries more effectively. That's all. That's as simple as it is. Okay, so let's move on to tip number 7. This is a popular one. I hear this a lot around monitor media consumption. So any situation where, even if it's a cartoon, that, sometimes in cartoons, I will catch some cartoon being on. My 4 and 6 year old will be watching TV, and it'll be very silly, but one character will bop another character on the head, and one of those, whatever they're called, will grow out of the top of their head, big bump, those kinds of things. It's funny, and yet those are the very behaviors we don't want children to pick up. So it's really important to be mindful. And sometimes, TV shows and cartoons can be pretty sneaky with that stuff, because they kind of wrap it into a comedy session in cartoons. And it's really difficult for children to differentiate between fantasy and reality. So if a child hits another child, it might just be because they saw it happen on a cartoon and they wanted to see somebody have a big bump come out of the top of their head. I mean, it could be as simple as that. So keep that in mind too, that what they're watching and taking in, not just through, TV and movies and things like that, but through commercials, through any other interactions that they see around them. And so, magazines, books, anything like that can really make an impact on a child. And pediatricians recommend no regular TV watching for children under the age of 2 and a maximum of 2 hours a day after that. So if you can try and manage that, I still think 2 hours is a lot of TV, depending on if it's a weekend day, school day, etc. But also, we go through times in our lives where that's just where we're at, and that's okay too. So give yourself some space and grace when you're stressed and you're going through a job transition, or there's a death in the family and you're in survival mode. Give yourself permission to do what you need to do to get by, because the most important thing is taking care of your mental health, mental and emotional health, while caring for your family. And sometimes screen time can be the link between you getting your needs met and doing the best you can as a parent. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so the last tip I have for you in this section of the video is to be a good role model. So when you're calm and peaceful, you teach your child to make smart choices too. So they're watching to see how you handle anything from traffic jams to a pot boiling over on the stove to when you stub your toe. All of those circumstances, your child is watching you and they are gauging subconsciously their reaction to their external world based on your reaction. So it's just really important to keep that in mind, that if you don't want your child to yell or hit, then you shouldn't either, even and especially when you're angry, because otherwise we're undermining our relationship with our children. And that's not going to be good for anybody. Okay, thank you so much for joining me for the first part of this video. I will see you in the next section.